I'm Thomas. I'm 28 years old, and I was scrubbing a motel toilet when I found out my father had sold me to his business rival to cover a $5 million debt. Before I tell you how I went from holding a toilet brush to holding the deed to his company in less than a week, do me a favor. Go down to the comments and let me know where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that smells like industrial bleach and damp carpet. I was working at the Willow Inn, a roadside motel that had seen better days in the 90s. I wasn't just the janitor. I was the maintenance guy, the groundskeeper, and occasionally the front desk clerk when Mrs. Higgins needed a nap. It wasn't the career I had planned. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA in finance. I had a degree that should have put me in a high-rise office in Chicago or New York. But in my town, your last name matters more than your resume. And my last name is Thornton. That name used to mean something. Now, for me, it just meant closed doors. I was backing out of room 104, dragging my supply cart, when I heard the engine. It wasn't the sputtering cough of the usual sedans that pulled in here. It was a roar, a deep, mechanical growl that vibrated in your chest. I looked toward the parking lot. A bright red Ferrari SF90 Straightale was pulling in. It looked like a spaceship landed in a mud puddle. The driver didn't bother with the lines. He parked diagonally across two spots, right over the rack where I locked my rusty 10-speed bike. My stomach dropped. I knew that car. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Marcus, my older brother, the golden child. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my annual salary, and he was checking his reflection in the side mirror. Then the passenger door opened. My father, Gerald Thornton, stepped out. He adjusted his silk tie, looking around the motel parking lot with a sneer of absolute disgust. He looked like he was afraid he might catch poverty just by breathing the air. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide in the supply closet until they left. But my feet felt like they were nailed to the pavement. "Thomas!" Marcus shouted. He didn't wave. He just pointed. "Hey, you missed a spot on your uniform." He laughed. It was that hollow, barking laugh he'd perfected since high school. My father walked over, his Italian leather shoes crunching on the gravel. He stopped 3 feet away from me. He wouldn't get closer. "Look at you," my father said. No greeting. No "how are you?" Just judgment. A Thornton, scrubbing floors. It's embarrassing, Thomas. Truly embarrassing. "I'm making an honest living, Dad," I said, gripping the handle of my cart. "It pays the rent." "Rent?" he scoffed. "You live in a shoebox above a laundromat." "I heard the police were there last week for a drug bust." "It was the building next door," I mumbled, though I knew it didn't matter. Facts never mattered to Gerald Thornton. Only optics. "We're here for lunch," Marcus announced, leaning against his Ferrari. "Mom wanted to try that diner across the street, but the wait was too long. We figured we'd see if this dump had a vending machine." "The diner is full because the food is good," I said. "And please move your car, Marcus. You're blocking my bike." Marcus looked at the Ferrari, then at my bike, then back at me. He smirked. "Oh, that's your bike? I thought it was scrap metal waiting for pickup." "My bad, little brother." He didn't move the car. My father pulled a $5 bill from his wallet. He held it out between 2 fingers, like it was a dirty tissue. "Here," he said. "Get yourself a sandwich. You look thin. People will think we don't feed you." "I don't want your money," I said. "Take it," he snapped. The mask slipped for a second, revealing the anger underneath. "Don't make a scene, Thomas. Just take the money and go away." I took the bill. Not because I wanted it, but because I wanted him to stop looking at me. I shoved it in my pocket. "Good boy," he said, turning his back on me. "Marcus, let's go. The air here smells like failure." They walked toward the motel office, presumably to harass Mrs. Higgins or use the restroom I had just cleaned. I stood there, my blood boiling. I looked at the Ferrari. I thought about keying it. I really did. I thought about dragging my key right across that perfect red paint. But I knew the consequences. I knew who held the power in this town. Instead, I pushed my cart around the back of the building to the service entrance. I needed to refill the soap dispensers. The motel walls were thin, paper thin. The service closet shared a ventilation duct with the manager's office, which doubled as a private meeting room when Mrs. Higgins wasn't there. I was reaching for a box of toilet paper when I heard voices coming through the vent. Monday at the latest, Gerald. I need an answer. It wasn't Marcus. It was a deeper, raspy voice. I froze. I knew that voice. It was Richard Palmer, the owner of Palmer Construction, my father's biggest rival. They had hated each other for 30 years. Why were they talking? The answer is yes, Richard. My father's voice came through clear as a bell. Stop sweating. The merger is a go. And the boy? Richard asked. He's the linchpin. If he doesn't sign, the bank won't release the funds. My auditors are breathing down my neck. Gerald, I need your assets to balance my books, and you need my cash to cover whatever mess Marcus got you into. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marcus? Mess? Don't worry about Thomas, my father said, his voice dripping with confidence. He's broken. I've spent 2 years making sure he has nothing. No career, no money, no friends. He's desperate. I'll dangle a manager position in front of him, maybe a condo, and he'll sign the marriage license before the ink is dry. Marriage license? My Emily isn't happy about it, Richard grunted. She wants to run the company, not play house with your reject son. She can run whatever she wants once the papers are signed, my father replied. This is a business transaction, Richard. My son for your capital. We merge the companies, the bank stays off our backs, and we control the entire state's construction market. Thomas will do what he's told, or he really will be dead to this family. I dropped the roll of toilet paper. It hit the floor with a soft thud, but to me, it sounded like a gunshot. They weren't just eating lunch. They were selling me. My father was trading me like a used car to fix a financial hole Marcus had dug. An arranged marriage? In the 21st century. It was insane. It was illegal. But it was happening. I heard chairs scraping. I'll have the contract ready for the gala on Saturday, Richard said. Make sure he shows up. He'll be there, my father promised. He has nowhere else to go. I slumped against the wall of the supply closet. The smell of bleach was suddenly overwhelming. I felt sick. My father had blacklisted me from every accounting firm in the state, forced me into poverty, and now he was going to use that poverty to trap me in a loveless marriage to save his own skin. I waited until I heard the Ferrari roar to life and fade into the distance. I walked out to the parking lot. The $5 bill was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and stared at Lincoln's face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message from a number I didn't recognize. No name, just a local area code. I opened the message. I saw you in the parking lot. Don't run. Meet me in the parking garage behind the Majestic Theater in 10 minutes. Level 4. Black Porsche. We have a common enemy. I stared at the screen. A common enemy? I looked at my rusty bike. Then I looked at the motel, at the bucket of dirty water, at the life my father had forced me into. I threw the $5 bill into the trash can. I unlocked my bike. I didn't know who was waiting in that parking garage, but for the first time in 2 years, I felt something other than shame. I felt curiosity, and underneath that, a spark of rage. I pedaled hard toward downtown. The wind bit at my face, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing back to the moment my life derailed. It wasn't gradual. It happened in a single afternoon 2 years ago. I was 26. I had just graduated. I had done everything right. I studied while Marcus partied. I saved while Marcus spent. I thought that if I proved my worth, my father would finally see me. The incident that ruined me involved a sum of money that, to my father, was less than a dinner tab, $1,200. It was my final semester. I needed expensive textbooks for my advanced auditing class and a new laptop because my old one had finally died. My father had given me a credit card for emergencies. I called him. I asked for permission. I remember his exact words. Fine, Thomas. Just get what you need and focus on your grades. I bought the books. I bought a refurbished laptop. The total was exactly $1,214.56. I kept the receipts. I always kept the receipts. 2 weeks later, he called me home. He sat me down in his mahogany-paneled study. Marcus was there, smirking in the corner. My mother was looking at the floor. "You stole from this family," my father said calmly. I was confused. "What? The books? You said I could." "I said emergencies," he lied. His eyes were cold, dead things. "Video games and comic books are not emergencies." "I bought a laptop for school," I protested. "I have the receipt." "I don't care about your scraps of paper," he shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. "You are irresponsible. You are a thief, and you will learn a lesson." He cut me off. He kicked me out. But that wasn't enough. When I applied for jobs, I'd get great interviews. Then, a day later, the rejection emails would come. Finally, a sympathetic HR manager at a local firm told me the truth. "Your father called," she whispered, looking over her shoulder. "He told the partners you have a gambling problem and a history of theft. He said hiring you would be a liability. He had blacklisted me. He wanted me to crawl back to him, begging for a crumb. He wanted to break me so he could mold me into a compliant little soldier like Marcus. But I refused. I took the job at the motel. I lived on ramen noodles. I kept my dignity, even if it smelled like floor wax. Now, as I rode up the spiral ramp of the majestic theater parking garage, I realized his plan had been much longer than I thought. He wasn't just teaching me a lesson. He was softening me up for a sale. Level 4 was empty, except for a sleek, black Porsche 911 Carrera. It was parked in the shadows, facing the exit. I stopped my bike about 20 feet away. My heart was pounding. Was this a trap? Was this Marcus playing another sick joke? The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. She was stunning, but not in a warm, inviting way. She was sharp. Her dark hair was cut in a severe bob. She wore a tailored business suit that looked like armor. She took off her sunglasses, and her eyes were like ice. It was Emily Palmer. I knew her from social circles back when I was still allowed in them. She was Richard Palmer's daughter, the princess of construction. Rumor had it she was smarter than her father and twice as ruthless. "You're late," she said. Her voice was flat, professional. "I came on a bicycle, Emily," I said, catching my breath. "It's not exactly a Porsche. Put that thing down and come here," she commanded. I leaned my bike against a concrete pillar and walked toward her. "You texted me? We need to talk," she said. "About the wedding." So she knew. Of course she knew. "I'm not marrying you," I said immediately. I heard them talking. "I'm not a piece of property to be traded for a loan." Emily leaned against the hood of her car, crossing her arms. "If you refuse, your father will ruin you completely. He'll have you evicted. He'll plant evidence. He'll have you arrested. I know Gerald. He doesn't take no for an answer." "So what? You want me to go along with it?" I asked, incredulous. "You want to marry me? The janitor?" "Don't flatter yourself, Thomas," she said, a small, humorless smile playing on her lips. "I don't want a husband. I want a CEO position." I frowned. "I don't understand." "My father is old school," Emily explained. "He thinks women are for decoration. He's going to leave the company to my cousin, Steve. Steve is an idiot. If Steve takes over, Palmer Construction goes bankrupt in 2 years." She pushed off the car and took a step toward me. "But if I marry you," she continued, "the merger happens. And in the merger contract, there's a clause my father insisted on. It says the Thornton heir will have a seat on the board. He thinks that means you, and he thinks he can control you because you're weak." "I'm not weak," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here. Everyone thinks you're a broken man scrubbing toilets. But I checked your college transcripts, Thomas. Summa cum laude. Top of your class in forensic accounting. You aren't stupid. You're just cornered." She reached into her car and pulled out a thick file folder. She tossed it to me. Caught it. What is this? That, she said, is the truth about why your father is so desperate. Open it. I opened the folder. It was full of bank statements, photocopied ledgers, and emails. I scanned the numbers. My eyes widened. Holy, I whispered. $5 million, Emily said. That's what your brother Marcus has siphoned out of Thornton Construction over the last 3 years. Exotic cars, high-stakes poker in Vegas, consulting fees to shell companies. Your father knows. He's been cooking the books to hide it, but the audit is coming next month. If he doesn't get my father's capital injection by Monday to plug that hole, he goes to jail. And Marcus goes to jail. It was worse than I thought. My father wasn't just saving the business. He was covering up a crime. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I want to make a deal, Emily said. Her eyes locked onto mine, intense and dangerous. My father is dirty too. Tax evasion, bribing inspectors. He's using this merger to wash his own money. If we get married, we gain access. Legally. As board members and spouses. She took a step closer. I could smell her perfume, expensive, subtle, intimidating. I need an accountant who can find the bodies buried in the ledgers, she said. And you need a way out of the gutter. We get married. We play the happy couple. You get inside, you find the evidence to take down my father. I'll give you the evidence to take down yours. You want to destroy your own father? I asked. I want to take what is mine, she corrected. He built that company on my mother's inheritance and then treated her like garbage until she died. I'm taking it back. And you? Don't you want to see Gerald Thornton beg? The image of my father sneering at me in the parking lot flashed in my mind. The $5 bill. The years of being called a thief. I don't just want him to beg, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I want him to admit he was wrong. Then we have a deal? Emily extended her hand. I looked at her hand. It was manicured, perfect. Mine was rough, calloused from manual labor. One condition, I said. We don't just expose them. We take it all. If we do this, we run the show. Both companies. Emily's smile widened, and this time, it reached her eyes. It was a predatory smile. I knew I picked the right janitor, she said. I shook her hand. Her grip was iron. Get in the car, she said. We have a lot of work to do before the gala. And Thomas? You might want to buy a better suit. We're going to war. The plan required me to do the one thing I promised myself I would never do. Return to the Thornton estate. I arrived at the wrought iron gates at 7 p.m. I wasn't wearing my janitor uniform. I was wearing the one decent suit I had left. A navy blue number that was slightly tight in the shoulders now that I'd spent 2 years lifting heavy boxes. I buzzed the intercom. Delivery goes to the side. The maid's voice crackled. It's Thomas, I said. Tell my father I'm here to accept his offer. The gate buzzed open slowly, ominously. As I walked up the long driveway, past the manicured hedges and the stone fountain, I felt like I was walking into the belly of a beast. The front door opened before I knocked. My mother stood there. She looked older than I remembered. Thinner. Her eyes darted around nervously, as if she were afraid the neighbors might see me. Thomas, she breathed. Oh, thank goodness. You came to your senses. Hello, Mom, I said. I wanted to hug her, but I stopped myself. She had stood by while he threw me out. She had watched him destroy my life and said nothing. Her silence was just as loud as his shouting. He's in the dining room, she whispered. Please just agree with him. Don't fight. For me, I'm not here to fight, I said calmly. I'm here to negotiate. I walked into the dining room. It was exactly as I remembered. Heavy velvet curtains, a chandelier that cost more than a house, and the smell of expensive cigars masking the scent of decay. Gerald sat at the head of the table. Marcus was on his right, scrolling through his phone. Well, my father said, not standing up. The prodigal son returns. I assume you're tired of cleaning other people's filth. I'm ready to come home, I said, keeping my face neutral. I heard about the merger. I know you need me. Marcus snorted without looking up. Need is a strong word. Use is better. Quiet, Marcus, my father snapped. He turned his gaze on me, analyzing me like a piece of livestock. You're smart to come back. The Palmers are expecting a groom. You will play the part. You will be charming. You will be obedient. In exchange, I will reinstate your allowance, and you will be given the title of Vice President of Logistics. Logistics? I asked. You mean the warehouse manager? It's a start, he said dismissively. Do this right, and maybe in 10 years you'll have a real office. But make one mistake, Thomas, one. And I will crush you so hard you won't even be able to get a job shoveling snow. I understand, I said. I'll do it. Good. Dinner with the Palmers is tomorrow night. Here, don't embarrass me. The next night was a masterclass in deception. Richard Palmer arrived with Emily. Richard was a bulldog of a man, short, thick-necked, aggressive. Emily looked ethereal in a silver dress, playing the part of the shy, dutiful daughter perfectly. We sat across from each other. My father and Richard spent the first hour drinking scotch and bragging about how much money this merger would make them. Marcus spent the time trying to flirt with Emily, who deftly deflected him with polite smiles. So, Thomas, Richard barked, stabbing a piece of steak. Gerald tells me you've been finding yourself. What exactly have you been doing? Learning the value of hard work, sir. I lied smoothly. My father thought it was important I understand the business from the ground up. Good, Richard grunted. My Emily could use some of that grit. She thinks reading books makes you a leader. Under the table, I felt a foot tap against my shin. I looked up. Emily winked at me. A tiny, imperceptible movement. It was the signal. Excuse me, I said. I dropped my napkin. I reached down. Emily's hand was there, holding a small silver USB drive. I took it, palming it instantly, and sat back up. So, Marcus interrupted, his mouth full of potatoes. When do we get the check? I've got a new investment opportunity one need to fund. Soon, Marcus, my father said, shooting him a warning look. Monday. Later that night, back in my tiny apartment, I plugged the USB into my old, battered laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't just embezzlement. It was a Ponzi scheme. Marcus hadn't just stolen $5 million. He had stolen employee pension funds. He had drained the retirement accounts of the foremen, the crane operators, the people who actually built the buildings. If this came out, they wouldn't just go to jail. They would be destroyed. The workers would riot. And Richard Palmer? His files were just as bad. He was bribing city officials to overlook safety codes. He was using substandard concrete in high-rise apartments. They're monsters, I whispered to the empty room. Both of them. I realized then that simply exposing them wasn't enough. If I exposed them now, the companies would implode. The workers, the innocent people, would lose their jobs and their pensions. I needed a way to take control without burning the house down. I needed to seize power, fire the criminals, and use the remaining assets to pay back the pension funds. But how? I was a janitor. Emily was a figurehead. We had no legal standing to take over. I stared at the screen, desperate. I opened my email, looking for anything from my past life. And there it was. An automated birthday reminder from an old calendar I hadn't used in years. Grandma Margaret's birthday. My grandmother. She started the company. She was the only one who ever believed in me. She died 3 years ago, right before the theft incident. I remembered something. A voicemail I got a week after she died. I had been so grief-stricken I never listened to it fully. Then the chaos with my father happened and I forgot. I dug through my cloud backups. I found the audio file. I pressed play. Her voice, shaky but determined, filled the room. Thomas, my dear boy, I know your father. I know what he's capable of. He thinks the company is his, but he forgets who wrote the checks in the beginning. I've set up a trust, Thomas. The Unity Trust. It's dormant. Nobody knows about it except my lawyer, Daniel Mercer. But if the day ever comes where the family loses its way, go see Daniel. I left a key for you. Use it wisely. A key? I sat up straight. Daniel Mercer. He was the biggest corporate attorney in the state. He had retired years ago, or so I thought. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. I texted Emily. I found a way, not just to expose them, to own them. Meet me at Mercer's office at 8 a.m. She replied instantly. I'm driving. Daniel Mercer's office was in a brownstone in the old historical district, far away from the glass and steel skyscrapers my father preferred. It smelled of old paper and lemon polish, a scent that instantly reminded me of my grandmother's library. Emily and I sat on a leather couch. She looked tired, clutching a coffee cup, but her eyes were alert. Daniel Mercer walked in. He was a man in his 70s, wearing a tweed vest and a bow tie. He walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp as tacks. He looked from me to Emily, then smiled. Thomas Thornton, he said softly. You look just like her. And Miss Palmer. An unexpected alliance. You were expecting me? I asked. Your grandmother said you would come eventually, Daniel said. He sat down behind his desk and unlocked a drawer. He pulled out a thick envelope sealed with wax. She said, Gerald will get greedy. And when he does, Thomas will need a shield. He's not just greedy, I said. He's criminal. He's selling me into a marriage to cover up embezzlement. Daniel nodded slowly. I assumed as much. Margaret knew Gerald viewed marriage as a merger, not a sacrament. He broke the seal on the envelope. Inside was a single, yellowed legal document. This, Daniel said, sliding it across the desk, is the Unity Trust Charter. Margaret founded Thornton Construction. Gerald forgets that she retained a golden share, a single share that holds 51% of the voting rights in the event of a crisis. But Gerald says he owns 100%, I said. He owns 100% of the common stock, Daniel corrected. The golden share is held in this trust, and the trust has a trigger clause. Emily leaned forward, scanning the document. Her finger stopped at a paragraph in the middle. Here, she read aloud. Clause 15b, the poison pill. In the event that a direct heir is coerced into marriage for the express purpose of financial consolidation or debt relief, the golden share shall immediately activate and transfer all voting rights to the coerced heir, provided said heir can prove the coercion. Prove it? I asked. How? The prenup, Emily realized. She looked at me, her eyes widening. The prenup they want us to sign. It details the merger. It explicitly states that the marriage is the condition for the capital injection. Exactly, Daniel said, leaning back. If you sign their prenup, you are creating the legal proof of coercion. It's a paradox. By forcing you to sign the document to save themselves, they are handing you the weapon to destroy them. But, I hesitated. If I sign it, I'm married. Legally. I looked at Emily. We would be legally bound, Emily said, and our assets would be merged. But, she looked at the document again. Once the golden share activates, Thomas controls Thornton Construction. And since I'm his spouse under a community property merger, you would control Palmer Construction's investment, Daniel finished. Together, you would effectively be the board of directors for the combined entity. It was brilliant. It was Grandma Margaret's final checkmate from the grave. She knew Gerald would try to use a marriage for money, so she turned the marriage into a trap. There's a catch, Daniel warned. His face turned serious. You have to sign their document first. Then, immediately, and I mean within seconds, you have to countersign the trust activation. If you sign their paper and don't activate the trust in time, or if they destroy the trust document, you are just legally married and owned by your fathers. We need to do it publicly, I said. At the gala, in front of witnesses. The gala is tomorrow night, Emily said. My father is bringing his entire legal team, and I will be there as your counsel, Daniel said, standing up. I haven't been to a party in years. I think it's time I reminded Gerald Thornton that the law applies to him too. We spent the next 6 hours strategizing. Emily scrutinized the financial data from the USB, building a case for the immediate firing of the board. I worked with Daniel on the exact wording we would use. We were building a guillotine. As we left the office, walking out into the bright afternoon sun, Emily grabbed my arm. "Thomas," she said. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "If this works, we're going to be married. For real. At least for a while, until we untangle the companies." "I know," I said. "I'm not the easiest person to be around," she admitted. "I'm work-obsessed. I'm cynical. And I don't cook." I laughed. "I'm a janitor who lives above a laundromat. I think I'm the one reaching here." She looked at me, really looked at me. "You're not a janitor, Thomas. You're the guy who is about to take down 2 tyrants to save 1,000 pensions. I can live with that." For a moment, standing there on the sidewalk, the fake alliance felt very real. "Let's go get them," I said. The Thornton Estate ballroom was dressed to kill. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen tears. Waiters in white gloves circulated with trays of caviar and champagne. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and old money. It was Saturday night, the night of the engagement, the night of the merger. I stood in front of a full-length mirror in the guest suite, adjusting my tie. It was a new tie, red, the color of power. Emily had bought it for me. My father walked in without knocking. He was glowing. He had a glass of scotch in one hand and a cigar in the other. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. "You clean up well," he said. It was the closest thing to a compliment he had ever given me. "Almost look like a Thornton." "I am a Thornton," I said, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "Tonight you prove it," he said. "Richard's lawyers are setting up the table on the stage. At 9 p.m., the announcement is made. You go up, you smile, you sign the prenuptial agreement and the merger contract. Then you kiss the girl. Simple. And the debt?" I asked. "Marcus's mess?" His smile vanished. "That is none of your concern. Once the Palmer money hits our accounts on Monday, the books will be balanced. Marcus is family. We protect family." "Right," I said. "We protect family. Don't get any ideas, Thomas," he warned, stepping closer. His voice dropped to a menacing growl. "I know you met with that old bat's lawyer, Mercer. If you try to pull a stunt, I will bury you. I will make sure the police find drugs in that little apartment of yours. Do you understand?" He was threatening to frame me, his own son. "I understand perfectly, Father," I said. "I'll do exactly what needs to be done." He clapped me on the shoulder. Hard. "Good lad." He left. I waited a minute, then checked the inside pocket of my jacket. The Unity Trust document was there, folded thin. Patted it. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I walked out to the balcony. Below, the party was in full swing. I saw Marcus down by the bar, laughing loudly with a group of sycophants. He was leaning against a pillar, looking drunk already. Then I saw Emily. She was wearing a dress of deep emerald green. She looked dangerous. She caught my eye from across the room and nodded once. It was time. I walked down the grand staircase. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that the younger son? I thought he was disowned. He looks confident." Richard Palmer intercepted me at the bottom of the stairs. "Ready, boy?" he grunted. "Big night." "Yes, sir," I said. "Ready to make history." "That's the spirit," he laughed. "Just remember who's really in charge once the ink dries." The orchestra stopped playing. My father stepped onto the stage. He tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "thank you for joining us. Tonight is not just a celebration of love, but of unity. Tonight, Thornton Construction and Palmer Construction become one family." Polite applause. "Please welcome the happy couple," he announced. "My son, Thomas, and Richard's daughter, Emily." I walked up the steps. Emily met me halfway. We held hands. Her palm was sweating slightly. "Showtime," she whispered. We stood on the stage. A long table was set up with 2 leather-bound folders. A team of lawyers stood behind it. Before we cut the cake, Richard Palmer announced, stepping up, we have some boring paperwork to finalize the union of our great houses. Laughter from the crowd. Thomas, Emily. My father gestured to the table. Please. We sat down. The lawyers opened the folders. The prenup was on top. It was thick. Sign here and here, Richard's lawyer pointed. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy Mont Blanc. I looked at the crowd. 200 of the state's wealthiest people were watching. My father was beaming. Marcus was toasting me with a smirk. Is there a problem? My father hissed, noticing my hesitation. No, I said, just savoring the moment. I'd like my counsel to review this one last time, I said loudly into the microphone. The room went quiet. My father froze. Counsel? He laughed nervously. Thomas, we went over this. I insist, I said. From the back of the room, a cane tapped rhythmically on the marble floor. Tap, tap, tap. The crowd parted. Daniel Mercer walked through, looking like an Old Testament prophet in a tweed suit. Mr. Mercer? My father stammered. I thought you were retired. Justice never retires, Gerald, Daniel said. He climbed the stairs slowly. He stood beside me. Proceed, Daniel said to me. Sign the document. My father looked confused. He expected Daniel to object. When Daniel didn't, Gerald relaxed. See? Even Mercer knows it's a good deal. Sign it. I looked at Emily. She nodded. I signed my name. Thomas Thornton. Emily signed hers. Emily Palmer. The moment the ink hit the paper, the trap was sprung. Done! Richard Palmer shouted. We are merged. Not quite. Daniel Mercer's voice cut through the applause like a knife. He pulled the yellowed Unity Trust document from his briefcase. He placed it on top of the prenup. By signing that document, Daniel announced, his voice amplified by the microphone, you have just confirmed that this marriage is a financial condition of a corporate merger. So what? My father snapped. That's business. Under the charter of the Thornton Unity Trust, Daniel read, that is defined as coercion, and as such. I picked up the pen again. I signed the bottom of the yellow document. Clause 15B is activated, Daniel finished. The golden share is now live. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. What is this nonsense? My father demanded, marching toward the table. What golden share? I own this company. You own the common stock, Gerald? Daniel said calmly, blocking him with his cane. But your mother, Margaret, retained a controlling interest in a dormant trust. By trying to sell your son to cover your debts, you just triggered it. Daniel picked up the yellow document I had just signed and held it up. Effective immediately, Daniel declared, Thomas Thornton holds 51% of the voting rights of Thornton Construction. He is now the chairman of the board. That's a lie, Marcus screamed from the bar. He threw his glass down, shattering it. It's a fake. Grandma was senile. It is notarized, filed, and irrevocable, Daniel said. I stood up. I took the microphone from the stand. I looked at my father. He looked smaller now. The blood had drained from his face. You wanted a merger, Dad, I said. You got one. But under the community property laws of the state, and the contract Emily just signed. I turned to Emily. She stood up, pulling a stack of papers from her clutch. The Palmer construction assets are now jointly managed, Emily announced. And as the new co-chair, I am exercising my right to audit the books. You can't do that, Richard Palmer roared, his face turning purple. You ungrateful little witch. Oh, I can, Emily said. And I did. She threw the papers onto the table. They scattered across the floor. These are the real ledgers, she said to the crowd. Richard Palmer has been using substandard concrete in the Riverview projects. He's been bribing safety inspectors. Gasps rippled through the room. People started pulling out their phones. And Thornton Construction? I said, turning to Marcus. My brother Marcus has embezzled $5 million from the employee pension fund to pay for his cars and his gambling addiction. Liar! Marcus lunged at me. He didn't make it. I didn't even have to move. Two large men in dark suits, private security Emily had hired, stepped out from behind the curtains and intercepted him. They grabbed Marcus by the arms. "Let go of me!" Marcus shrieked. "Do you know who I am?" "You're a thief, Marcus," I said into the microphone. "A real one. Not the kind who buys textbooks. The kind who steals from old men's retirements." My father was shaking. He looked at Richard, then at Marcus, then at me. He realized the walls were closing in. "Thomas," he stammered, his voice trembling. "Son, let's talk about this in private. We can fix this. We're family." "Family?" I laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. "You told me I was dead to this family if I didn't sign. Well, I signed. But the family you were talking about, the one built on lies and bullying, that family is dead. I did it for us," he yelled, desperate now. "To keep the name alive." "You did it for your ego," I said. "You blacklisted me. You made me scrub toilets while he drove a Ferrari bought with stolen money. You thought I was weak. You thought I was broken." I leaned in close to him. The microphone picked up my whisper. Grandma knew better. I turned to the security guards. "Please escort Mr. Gerald Thornton, Mr. Marcus Thornton, and Mr. Richard Palmer off the premises. They are trespassing on company property." "You can't do this," Richard screamed as the guards moved in. "I'll sue you. I'll bury you." "You'll be busy with the FBI," Emily said coolly. "I sent the files to the district attorney an hour ago." Chaos erupted. The guests were frantically whispering, taking photos or leaving. The waiters stopped serving. My father tried to maintain his dignity. He straightened his jacket. He looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only hate. "You'll fail," he spat. "You don't know how to lead. You're a janitor." "I'd rather be a janitor than a fraud," I said. I watched them drag Marcus out. He was crying now, begging Daddy to do something. But Daddy had no power left. As they were shoved out the double doors, a distinct sound drifted in from the driveway. It wasn't the roar of an engine. It was the beep 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 of a tow truck. "Is that?" Emily asked, a smile tugging at her lips. "The repo team," I said. "I called the bank this morning. Told them the collateral on the Rolls-Royce was fraudulent. They didn't waste time." The crowd watched through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Gerald's beloved Phantom was hoisted onto a flatbed truck. I looked at the crowd. They were staring at me, waiting to see what the new king would do. "The bar remains open," I announced into the mic, "and for the employees of Thornton and Palmer Construction present tonight, your pensions are safe. We will liquidate personal assets of the former board members to make the funds whole." A cheer went up. It started small, from the waitstaff, the few honest employees in the back, and then it grew. I put the microphone down. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash. Emily walked over to me. She took my hand. This time it wasn't for show. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," I said. Daniel Mercer walked up, smiling. "Margaret would have loved this, especially the part with the tow truck." The aftermath of the gala was swift and brutal. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Emily wasn't bluffing about the district attorney. They had been building a case against Richard Palmer for months, but they needed the internal documents Emily provided to make the arrest stick. They took Richard away in handcuffs right there in the lobby. My father and Marcus weren't arrested that night. White-collar crime investigations take time, but they were effectively exiled. I stood on the balcony with Emily, watching the flashing lights of the police cars fade into the night. The ballroom was empty now, save for the cleaning crew. "So," Emily said, leaning on the railing, "we're married." I looked at the ring on her finger. "Technically, it's a business arrangement. The most profitable one in the history of this city," she mused. Then she looked at me. "My father." He looked at me with such hatred, like I was the villain. "You were the hero," I said firmly. "He was poisoning people with bad concrete, Emily. You stopped him. And you?" she asked. How do you feel? I thought about it. I thought about the years of rejection, the shame, the smell of the mop bucket. I feel like I can breathe, I said. For the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for permission to exist. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, auditors, and press conferences. The bank seized the Thornton estate. It turned out my father had mortgaged it 3 times over to cover Marcus's debts. They were given 30 days to vacate. I went there one last time to supervise the asset seizure. My father was sitting in his study, surrounded by boxes. The mahogany desk was gone, tagged for auction. He was sitting on a folding chair. He didn't look up when I entered. Are you happy? He asked. His voice was raspy, broken. No, I said honestly. I'm not happy that it had to be this way. I wanted a father, not an enemy. But you chose your path. I built this, he whispered. I built all of this. Grandma built it, I corrected. You just spent it. And Marcus? He asked. Will you press charges? The pension fund trustees are pressing charges, I said. I won't stop them. He stole from working people, Dad. He has to face the consequences. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. You're cold, Thomas. Colder than I ever was. I'm just an accountant, I said, turning to leave. I balanced the books. I walked out of that house and I never looked back. 6 months later, I walked into my office on the top floor of the newly rebranded Margaret Holdings. The sign on the door said Thomas Thornton, CEO. Next door, connected by a glass wall, was Emily Thornton, COO. We had spent the last half-year cleaning house. We sold off the luxury assets, the jets, the vacation homes, the art collection. We poured every cent back into the company to stabilize it and repay the pension funds. It was hard work. We worked 18-hour days. But the workers respected us. They knew we had saved their retirements. My relationship with Emily had evolved. We didn't annul the marriage. At first, it was just too legally complicated. Then it was because we made a hell of a team. And lately, well, let's just say we've been having dinner together not because we have to discuss business, but because we want to. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Emily and I drove out to the cemetery. We weren't in a Rolls-Royce or a Ferrari. We were in a sensible SUV. We walked up the hill to Grandma Margaret's grave. I placed a bouquet of yellow roses, her favorite, on the stone. We did it, Grandma, I said softly. The door is open. I pulled out my new business card and tucked it into the soil at the base of the headstone. Emily stood beside me, her hand brushing against mine. Do you think she knew? Emily asked. That we would end up together? She knew I needed a partner, I said. She knew I couldn't do it alone. She was a wise woman, Emily said. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Higgins at the Willow Inn. I had bought the motel 3 months ago. I promoted Mrs. Higgins to general manager, gave her a raise, and renovated the place. It was my way of remembering where I came from. Fully booked this weekend, boss, the text read. I smiled. I looked at Emily. Ready to go back to work? Always, she said. So, what about the papers? I asked, referring to the divorce papers we had drafted but never signed. Should we file them? Emily looked at me, a playful glint in her eyes. The same look she had when she winked at me at that dinner table. Good partners are hard to find, she said. Let's keep them in the drawer for now. Let's see how far we can go. I took her hand. Deal. We walked back down the hill, leaving the ghosts of the past behind us. My father and Marcus are currently awaiting trial. They live in a small rental apartment on the edge of town. I send them a check every month, enough for rent and groceries but not enough for scotch or cigars. It's exactly the amount my father used to pay me when I scrubbed his toilets. I think it's poetic. I learned a lot in the last year. I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. I learned that your worth isn't defined by your job title, but by your integrity. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes, when life closes every door in your face, you have to build your own. Or, if you're lucky, you have a grandmother who left you a key. Thank you for listening to my story. It hasn't been easy reliving this, but I hope it touched you in some way. Maybe you're dealing with a toxic family or a boss who doesn't see your value. I hope this proves that things can change. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved to do what was right? I'd love to hear your story. Please share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Take care of yourselves. You deserve to be free.